Hi guys, welcome back to Cupcakes and Protein Shakes. I am your host, Savana Sharp, and so I have the lovely Zoey Panzarino. Is that correct?
Panzarino, but you were
Oh
really close.
gosh, it's the last names for me that do it. But an IFBB Pro. So I'm really excited to talk to you about your experience in the fitness and bodybuilding world. I think you're going to have some great insights for our listeners. So welcome to the show.
Thanks. I'm so happy to be here.
Good. So how are you in general? How is life going for you right now?
Oh, girl, I am good today. Life has been crazy, but when is it not? So
Yeah.
things are going
What's
good.
what's been crazy for you?
I had a family situation last week, so I had to make a quick trip to Florida for a couple days, and I am a very routine human, so being
Yeah.
thrown off my routine is like, all right, let's adapt and go. So it's just been a little bit of a whirlwind, but back on track now, so we're good.
For sure. So when you are traveling, like, are you prepping currently or are we in off season?
I am not prepping right now, but I'm still that person. Like I prep all my food, I bring it with me. I eat cold tilapia on the plane. You know.
Yes, the tilapia and lettuce. Well, let's get started back to the beginning of your journey. So when you got introduced to the bodybuilding world for the very first time, what were your initial thoughts?
So when I was first exposed to it, I actually like my first encounter was from a figure competitor. So I didn't necessarily know too much about bikini, and I just thought all of it was like the coolest thing ever. I was like, wait, what? You can like sculpt your body to look like this, and there's a way to compete for this. So I just thought it was super cool. And I was like, I already loved training, and I was always just like self taught with that. So it was really cool that there was like a specific avenue to go in.
So tell me a little bit about your pre-bodybuilding experience. So I believe like you were in sports growing up.
Yeah, I was a super tomboy. I think I played every sport under the sun. But pretty much I was a swimmer I did a USA swimming for about 7, 8 years. And that was like my main competitive drive. And when I went off to college, I went to UCF in Orlando. Cool. They didn't have a swim team. So that kind of ended my career there. And I just have always been extremely competitive and athletic. So I was like, okay, well, I have to find something to do. And that's what got me into the gym in the first place.
Okay. And so what year was that?
Oh, that was 2009. I'm old.
2009. Okay. Wow. So you've had a pretty significant journey in the bodybuilding world. Let's talk about finding a coach. Did you initially coach yourself or did you find someone to help you?
No. Well, let's clarify. When I first started going to the gym, I was not straight into bodybuilding. That
Okay.
took years. Um, I actually first knew about competing and wanted to compete probably like 2015, 2014 maybe. But I did, when I first initially decided to compete, I did hire a coach. I've had one and only coach. His name's William Grazione, and I respect that man to the day I die.
So was he the one that would prep you for your first prep?
Yeah, he prepped me all the way up until I earned my pro card, and then I've been prepping myself since then.
Okay. So on your first prep ever, what did you expect it was going to be like?
So when I first called him and said that I wanted to compete, I just called him straight up and I was like, I'm going to do a show in 12 weeks. Like, I picked a show. I didn't know that you more than likely need more time than that. I've never worked with this coach before. He knows nothing about my body or me, but I did actually step on stage 12 weeks later and it was great. But I had already been like predisposed and utilizing flexible dieting before I hired him. So I was very familiar with like tracking macros, manipulating all of that. But I don't think I expected a lot of like the mental toughness that came along with prep.
Yeah. So on your first show, how did you end up doing?
So I actually won the overall in novice, and then I believe I got second in my class in open.
So did that mean nationally qualified on your first show?
Yeah.
So did you keep going and competing that year to nationals?
No, I had no idea what nationals was. I had no idea what it meant to be a pro. I didn't even know that was a thing. I first wanted to do this show just as like a bucket list thing. I was like, oh, I just want to be competitive and try it. And I did another show after that, and I got second as well in open. Of course, like once you win the overall novice, you can't compete in novice again. So that was cool. Still had no idea what nationals were. But at that point, my coach was a professional natty bodybuilder. So he introduced me to the NGA. And he was like, hey, I really think that you should try this out. I'm going to like pay for you to do the show just so you can experience that federation. So my last show of my first season was an NGA show. And at that point, I understood like, oh, these shows could be pro qualifiers. Like you could turn pro pretty quickly. So I first had my sights set on that because I still had no idea what an IFBB pro was.
So when you were did you end up going pro in the NGA?
I did.
Okay. So when do you think the mindset for you switched from like, okay, I'm just doing this from a bucket list to, okay, I actually like doing this. Like, let's get competitive. Let's go pro. When was that switch for you?
Well, I think two different times. So after my first show, I really realized like I could be pretty good at this. And I think it's just because I went into that first show with zero expectations, and coming out on top was an amazing feeling, and you get that stage bug. And I was like, when are we doing this again? So definitely I did 3 shows my first season. And after that, I had a coach who always prioritized health. And he's like, you're not competing all year round. Like he introduced me to what an actual improvement season was. So I took about almost a full year before that, my last show, and the next time I stepped on stage in 2017. And my goal in 2017 was NGA Pro because that's all I knew. So I did achieve that. I think it took 2 more shows to do that. And I never actually competed as a pro in the NGA. I think after that, during that time period is when I pretty much learned about NPC nationals and what an IFBB pro was. And kind of felt like I graduated from the NGA. And I was like, all right, yeah, if you compare apples to apples on a natural athlete field, okay, I'm a pro. But now I want to see against the best of the best how I stack up. And that's kind of what drove me from that point of, no, we're going to go do nationals at the NPC level.
So for girls that are just starting out, who would you recommend go NGA versus NPC?
Oh, totally different. So to be honest, the NGA or OCB or any natural federation, it tends to be a lot smaller. It is a lot more like family oriented. And yes, like you do have girls that are competitive, but it's not that same like mindset, I guess. And the conditioning in general is just not at the same level. Unfortunately, you do have a lot of athletes who, in my opinion, they're not stage lean. They're not even close to it. If you were competing in the NPC, it's almost like you're going to be like 8 weeks out. So it's a big difference. You do have those outliers where they come in shredded and very hard, and it is a difference. I think it's a great stepping stone for a new competitor to gain confidence because, again, you are comparing apples to apples. And if you're a natural athlete, why not see how well you do against other natural athletes? So in that sense, it helped me a lot with just my stage presence and my confidence and just prepping and learning yourself in general. And then I took that and elevated it to the national NPC level.
So transitioning from one federation to the other federation, and did you have to go back to like a regional level show to requalify for NPC nationals too?
I'm sure I did, but I did anyway. Like
Okay.
I didn't jump right back into nationals. Like at the time I had lived in South Florida, and Florida is a very competitive state and we have shows all the time. So I kind of just like, oh, this one looks like it's a really big show. Let's jump into that one. And that was that was the first time that I had won my open class and I got to compete for the overall. And, Didn't win the overall at that show, but still, it was, a show that I stood up, I won my class, and it was the first time I was judged in front of Sandy. And I have always been taught from day one, you get in-person feedback after a show.
Yes.
Always. So I remember having a conversation with Sandy, and she was like, "You're going to go to nationals, right?" And I'm like, "Oh, you think so?" Like, I was so like not confident in myself at that point. And I was like, "Okay, sure." So decided to do North Americans, which was probably about 6 weeks later after that show, and went by myself. Like, my coach didn't go, nobody went with me, and ended up taking 4th in my first national show.
Wow.
So I was like, all right, cool. I don't, again, went in 0 expectations. Like, I always just think the worst. So I'm always like, okay, you're going to get less call outs. Like,
Yeah.
accept it. But getting first call outs and getting top 5, fire was lit. So called my season at that point because it had already been a long time. And then literally Road to Pro started 2018 and went all the way until Miami Nationals, NPC Nationals.
So is that November?
Yeah.
Okay. So that was a long haul. So along the way for your pro card prep, what was different about it? What was different about that prep?
Biggest game changer is that the absolute best reverse diet I have ever had was after 2017, after doing North Americans. Okay. I nailed that, and I, pat myself on the back for it. But I, at that time, moved across the country, moved to Vegas. I was like starting a new job. There was a lot of things being thrown my way, but I made that a priority. Never let that slack. And I think at that point, I had a much better starting position for a prep than I ever have. And it made the actual prepping process a lot more manageable. The actual prep life around it was very difficult that year, but I think that was the biggest game changer, was having a true improvement season.
And how long was that time?
So that was from North Americans is
like
August
or something like that.
So that went all the way until, I believe, the end of March in 2018 is when I started prep.
So what is your biggest advice for girls currently in their improvement season to maximize that time?
Take your improvement season like you're in the middle of prep. Yes, you're going to have a little bit more flexibility when it comes to food or treat meals or things of that nature, but your training needs to be highly intense. It's just not because you don't have a stage in a week doesn't mean that you can like slack your training. Like, go into it like every session is your last. Take your food seriously. If you're somebody who follows flexible dieting, that doesn't mean, oh, I'm in improvement season, I can fit everything I want to. It doesn't become if it fits your macros. Like, still stick to the basics, because if you're a competitor, what your body responds to best. And if that's going to help you cut, that same food is also going to help you grow.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense too. So when you're on, let's see, on show day, did you feel like you were going to win your pro card?
Yeah, I did.
You did know.
I mean, when it came down to that, so my road to pro in 2018 was like team second place. I was runner up for every freaking show that I did. And I did 4 national shows in 2018 and just keep getting runner up and runner up. My feedback was always just show up the next show. Like, don't change anything, which honestly is kind of a mental fuck. Can I say that?
Yes, you can totally say that.
I was like, oh, sorry. Yeah, it's a mind fuck for sure. That's just telling you like, hey, you're not good enough to turn pro, but don't change anything.
Yeah. There's
difficult.
So how do you take that internally? Like, okay, like you're great, but you're still trying to make improvements. So what does that change with your workout routine, how you prep, how you go into, what did you want to change between show to show?
So the biggest change actually happened so I did the Olympia Amateur in 2018, and I love Sandy. I have a really great relationship with her. And I remember after that show, my coach, my husband, and me, like we had, I think like a 30-minute conversation, just chilling. Nobody else was there. And she gave me really awesome feedback. And at that point we were like, okay, we have to reverse into Miami. So there's about a 10-week gap in between those two shows. And I reversed hard. And it was, again, very difficult to process mentally of, okay, you're prepping for a pro show or to turn pro, and you have to keep increasing your food. You can't do cardio. You have to do the opposite. So I just felt like my struggles were the opposite of what everyone else was going through, and it felt wrong. But by the time I actually got to show day in November, at that point I was like, no, you're ready. Like, you have done exactly what you've been asked to do. You made the improvements. You're fuller. Your posing was on point, everything. So I was like, all right, self, this is your time. And, my NPC Nationals is a 2-day show. So you have prejudging one day and then finals the next day.
Yeah.
Can you talk about like
That's
suspense?
it's so much time. So in between that time, what do? So we're stepping on stage, we're getting ready, you're super confident. We go out for prejudging. What's going through your mind before you step on stage? And then kind of like in between that day of limbo?
So before I stepped on stage for prejudging, I just told myself, like, own it. Like, girl, break out Beyonce. And when you step on that stage, it's yours. And I felt like I did that. And when I split center, I stepped off stage and I had to like hold back some emotion. I'm not an emotional person.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, don't get overexcited. You don't know. You have to wait till tomorrow. So at that point, the next day was so chill. Like, I went to the gym with my coach. We had a great training session. I went and had more sushi. We worked a little bit. It was like any other day. It was cool. And then I was like, oh, all right, well, it's time for hair and makeup. Let's go. And then got on stage, and girl, I bawled like a baby when I stepped off stage.
Okay. So let's go to like finals night, and like we're getting lined up, and you're like, okay, like, it's either going to happen or it's not going to happen. And, they throw you on stage, you do a little spin and twirl, and, I'm here and say goodbye. And now we're sitting on the sidelines, and fifth place is getting called. It's not your name. And then what happens next?
My heart is racing.
Uh-huh.
Because it's just that countdown.
Yep.
I don't know. Like, I'm not an overly cocky person. So I don't just stand there like, I won. But fifth place, fourth place. And then when they get to third, I was like, oh, please God, please don't call my name. And they did it. And top 2 turns pro in NPC Nationals. So that was just like, oh my God, like the biggest weight lifted off my shoulders.
So did you end up getting second or first?
Second.
Okay. So is it the same feeling as if you would have gotten first?
I think so.
Okay.
I think because at that point, it wasn't necessarily about the placing. It was just that pro card.
Yep.
Like, I want to graduate from the NPC into the IFBB, and I don't care how I get there.
So do you feel like you were able to like actually enjoy your time in the amateur league?
I do. I think because I didn't rush it. I think being as naive as I was in the beginning actually allowed me to enjoy every single show. If I had known what it was to be an IFBB pro before I went into my first show ever, I know myself and my mindset, and I probably always would have been unhappy until I got to that point. But almost like learning as I went really helped me enjoy it.
So for you, what does earning an IFBB pro card mean to you, or what does it mean to represent the division?
Honestly, that has changed.
Okay.
So when I first was going after the pro card, I wanted it just for the sense of achievement, and just, I don't know, I'm very competitive. So it was like, I just want that, I don't think I really understood what it meant to be an IFBB pro. I just wanted to win. I wanted to feel like I've crossed the finish line. It was just You start something, you finish it. That's what I wanted. But I think it wasn't until after that that I really realized, like, you have a platform now. Now you are in a leadership role where people are going to look up to you because you've achieved something so many women strive for. And it really kind of took me from that point to understand, like, your lifestyle, like, you don't really get an on and off switch anymore. You have to, like, live this every day because you chose it. And you have to make sure that you are a role model for these girls who want that same position that you're in right now.
Yeah, I think that's like something that's going to, as you evolve and go into the pro league, because once you're a pro for life. So there's no rush to get there. You want to talk about your pro experience? How many pro shows have you done?
I prefer not to count anymore. Honestly, no, I've done 6.
6? Okay. And your first pro show, what was that experience like, stepping on stage with a bunch of other pros?
Okay. All right. I have to tell you the story of how I got there first.
Okay.
So after I got my pro card, I knew, like, I've been prepping all year long. Like, you need a long improvement season. So I did that. I think that was the first time I had ever experienced post-show blues.
Okay.
And that was pretty significant because I felt like I was on a pedestal and I had to be perfect. And that was me trying to understand what it meant to be a pro. And I was, I thought, like, oh, okay, well, if you're not perfect, you can't post anything on Instagram or social media. You can't show that you're eating something you shouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
So I struggled with that for a while. And I did not have an ideal improvement season because of it. Mm-hmm. It really, like, training wise, that has never suffered or trained, but nutritionally, I didn't push myself the way that I needed to. And that was also the first time that I was coaching myself. So rather than being like, you're a coach now, it's just like, do your thing. Sorry, go ahead.
So, okay. Why did you decide that I'm ready to coach myself? Why did you make that change?
So on a personal level, like, the entire year that I was Road to Pro, I was working very similar to your Amazon career, actually. So I worked for a company called Vitacost.
Okay.
I don't know if you've heard of them. They're competitor, but so when I lived in Florida, I worked in their corporate office. I did product development and formulation. So I made all sorts of, like, supplements and foods, and amazing experience. So when we moved to Vegas, and we moved because my husband was relocated for his job, and I was like, team adventure, let's go. So we decided to go to Vegas, and I literally the day before we moved was told that, okay, you actually can't work remote. And I was like, what am I going to do?
Uh-huh.
So one of our warehouses is actually located in Vegas. So I kind of, like, switched into logistics.
Okay.
And worked in, like, the offices of the warehouse in a sense. So the entire time that I was prepping for my Road to Pro, I was working about, like, 72 hours a week.
Yep.
I was sleeping 4 hours a night, which anyone in prep, your sleep is absolutely crucial.
Vital.
Like, you will turn into a zombie. I watched myself do that, and it was miserable. So by the time I went through the entire year in prepping, I was like, I can't do this anymore. So I had started out kind of coaching at that time underneath my coach. So I was, like, more of an assistant coach under him. And it got to the point where I finally worked up my coaching to where I was like, I have to make a decision because I can't work 2 full-time jobs. So I actually quit my job peak week of when I turned pro.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Which, again, was, I think, what helped my stress levels as well, because I got rid of a huge burden.
Right.
Now I'm coaching. So after came back home after earning my pro card and stuff, I still was a coach underneath him, but we kind of just decided at that point, like, you're just gonna, like, check in with yourself, and if you're coaching other girls, he kind of just was like, well, you could coach your improvement season. So that's, a lot of back end things happened within that time period of my first, like, pro improvement season, to where I never initially wanted to coach myself, but I was getting married in 2019, And I knew that, okay, I'm going to take time away from the stage. I'm going to focus on planning the wedding and all of that. And then in July of 2019, I decided that I was going to do like the first ever lifestyle cut. And I was going to shred it for the wedding. And I was like, okay, this is a perfect opportunity to coach myself and see if I can do a lifestyle cut. And I did. And I ended up probably like 3 pounds away from stage weight on my wedding day.
Oh, wow. Nice.
Yeah. But when I started that cut, that was also the heaviest I had been in my entire life. So my lifestyle cut, I actually lost about 20 pounds.
Wow.
And I've never had to lose that much for any prep ever.
Yeah.
So that was kind of struggle. And I had a lot of people ask me, like, are you going to compete soon? And I saw that the Sacramento Pro was like 3 weeks after my wedding. And I didn't want to make that decision until after. So we got married in Miami and I fully enjoyed myself. Like, girl, if you ever saw videos, I ate, I drank, I had fun, I celebrated. And then I waited until I got home to kind of assess my physique and say, like, did you ruin everything or are you in a good spot? And at that point I decided, you know what? I'm going to push for 3 weeks as hard as I can, and I'm going to do my pro debut. So
how do you walk that borderline of not being so self-critical where you take yourself either too far in the wrong direction? Like, how do you look at your check-in pictures objectively and make a plan that's not going to, I'm not going to come in like overly lean. I'm going to not come in like not conditioned. How do you fight that mental battle and still be able to create a plan based on like where you think you need to be?
that's a tough one. And I think I'm still learning that. You're always going to be, but I am my own worst critic forever. Nobody will be harder on myself than I am on me.
Right.
But what helps is that I am not an emotional person. I don't really like any prep that I've done. I don't really like overly question myself. I don't pick myself like apart in that like an emotional sense. So it's not difficult for me to look at my photos just like I would any other client and like circle areas of opportunity and like what do I need to do. And if I set macros for myself or create a meal plan, like I stick to it. I don't need somebody else to hold me accountable to it. So in that sense, it's not hard to just create a plan and follow it as long as I sit there and logically make out a plan. Like when I did my pro debut, I had an entire Excel spreadsheet and I wrote out my peak week plan every day. I had all of my data. And I think having that factual data to go off of allows me to be more objective.
Okay. That makes a lot more sense. So going into the pro league, what happened at your first show?
So my first show was an amazing experience.
Okay.
It was really awesome. Again, went into it with zero expectations because I didn't even have a long enough time period to like hype myself up. I had like a 3-week prep essentially. And I just was like, okay, let's do it. And instead of like an NPC, you know how shows are hurry up and wait.
Mm-hmm.
Rush, and then sit backstage forever.
Yeah.
Well, in pros, we have a designated time that you are going to step on stage. So it eliminated all of that. And I think also not having a coach, I didn't have to take photos and send it and wait for a response. And okay, what am I going to eat? When am I going to eat it? It was like, do your thing, take your pictures, look at them. Okay, go eat your food. Like it was so low stress and just on my own terms, which was an amazing feeling. And I got backstage. I had friends back there who, you know, have not their first rodeo that kind of like guided me through it. And I just had fun. I think at that point, you know you're going from being a very big fish in a small pond to a tiny little guppy in the ocean, and you can't expect to just walk on and win. Does it happen? Yeah, but very rarely. So I knew I had to pay my dues. I just wanted to have fun, and I did. And I think my pro debut, I ended up, I want to say like 14th, 15th.
15th.
Yeah.
So how is that? How do you take placing personally? Like as after your shows, how do you feel once you get a placing? Like, what do you feel like?
to this point, I am numb to them.
Okay. And
Like,
tell us why that's important in this sport.
it's a subjective sport. You know, this isn't basketball where you make it or you don't. You know, like you can control the controllables, but it's up to the hands of the judges on that day. And you don't know who's going to show up. You don't know, you know, those judges, what they're favoring towards, what, you know, it is preference at the end of the day. Yes, there's a criteria, but, you know, symmetry isn't black and white. You know, popularity isn't black and white. So if you're going to be butthurt over a placing, you're in the wrong sport.
Mm-hmm. I 100% agree. It's about the journey and who you become. And let's talk about though feedback though, because it's really important. It seems like you've been getting feedback every single show. How did your feedback change in the pro league? And what did you do once you started stepping on, you know, these top stages?
So my feedback has never changed.
Has it always been the same?
Always. Like ever since the dang amateur Olympia, my feedback has always been fill out.
Mm-hmm.
And
the full look, it's in, but not too full.
Yes. But you have to understand too that when I first started competing in 2016 to where we're at in 2021, the division has changed tremendously. Yes. So maybe my feedback has been the same, but that doesn't mean I'm still striving for the same look, because what they're awarding has evolved over time.
Do you think that you will stay in bikini for like the rest of your career?
Yeah, I am way too tiny for any other division.
Okay. And then what is your goals in the pro league?
So again, I'm really competitive. At the end of the day, I would love to be on the Olympia stage.
Okay.
You know, again, placing's not really important, but it's just that's the epitome of our sport.
Yeah.
Again, I don't compete to lose, and I want that. And I'm not saying like, of course, like I would love to win a pro show, but I don't think less than of anybody who qualifies based off points either.
Right.
So that is my end goal.
I want to talk to you about 2020 as well and how the pandemic affected you and training and your clients and what happened during that time.
Yeah. So I actually did a show before the pandemic. So I think it was like one of the only pro show was Legends Classic, and it was in February. And
so, okay, right before shutdown.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I did my pro debut in November, and then I said that because I had to grow, I was going to reverse my way into that show. And the only reason I did that was because it was local to me. It was in Vegas. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I have the opportunity as a pro to compete locally. You take advantage of that. So did that show. I did improve my placings. I think I got to like 12th in that show. And that was my first muscle contest show ever. And again, feedback was fill out. So we'll leave that there. And I'm like, okay, so I had planned out that I was going to do a bunch of shows in the spring and then call it a season. And then the rest of 2020 was going to be improvements. Well, COVID. So that didn't happen. And I'm already stage lean. And I was like a couple weeks out from my next show. What do I do? So instead of probably pulling it back a little bit and being like, all right, let's use this time to eat more, do less, I was stubborn and I was utterly convinced that this wasn't going to last and I wasn't going to ruin my conditioning by, letting myself go per se during shutdown. And then we come out and then, oh, well, okay, now I'm not ready for the show. So I pushed way too hard during lockdown, and I probably wouldn't have admitted it then, but I will now. I pushed way too hard. And it just led me to, I'm very much a small human by nature. I'm not I'm a hard gainer. So when I had shut down, I didn't have the gym. So I did way, way too much walking, aka a lot of cardio.
Yeah.
And it overly conditioned my lower body. I have veins galore in my quads, It's not okay for bikini.
No.
No. And I trained out of my garage, and I was able to get, a barbell, some plates, and things to work with. I wasn't just luckily stuck with bands. So I was pretty blessed in that area. I was very regimented. I never missed a training session. I never slacked on cardio. I stuck to my diet. I don't even think I really ever had any free meals during that time, because in my head, like, you're on prep.
Right.
And it just carried on. And as soon as I could jump into a show, I was like, well, I'm ready. And yeah.
So how were your clients during that time?
Definitely dependent on where they lived. So I would say about like 50% of my roster is lifestyle and 50% are competitors. So I did have several clients who were on prep, and I pulled them back. I more or less reversed them, gave them diet breaks. Kind of was based off too if they had access to training at home or what. Like, it's completely individualistic. More so for like lifestyle competitors, lifestyle clients. Wow. Sorry.
Okay.
I just didn't want anybody in a deficit.
Yeah.
Because it was a lot of stress being placed on them. And honestly, like, it was a tough time period as a coach, because I did lose a couple clients because, they were being furloughed, they lost their job. And at the end of the day, I would much rather you keep your electric bill on than hire a coach. Like, I'm not a necessity.
Right.
I really had to understand that and kind of bounce back from it, which I did. And, I'm really glad that I was able to bounce back from that quickly. But from their perspective, we did a lot of like group, like Zoom meetings, and just more like community things so that they didn't feel alone, because mental health was a huge struggle for so many during that time.
Right. So what do you think your favorite part of being a coach is?
Two parts. So like, I absolutely love the relationships that I have built with all of like my current clients, past clients. Like, I feel like I've grown a huge family. And also, like, when somebody comes to you and they have a problem and they set a goal and they achieve it, it's so fulfilling to me to see like their pride in themselves when they achieve their goal. Like, I don't have kids, but I feel like a parent to so many women that when they achieve it, like, I get just as like sentimental about it as they do.
Yeah. And then let's talk about the opposite. So least favorite parts of being a coach.
So again, two things.
Okay.
One, my biggest pet peeve is when people ghost you. It happens more times than I think people talk about. I don't think it happens to a good or a bad coach anymore, but it's just a lot of people aren't ready for the commitment, or they say they are and then they fall off, or they ghost you. And I've always just been, just own up to it. Just communicate. If you want to just tell me, hey, this isn't for me, I'm sorry, whatever, that's fine. I don't take it personal. I don't take it hard. But when people ghost you, it's a lack of respect. And oh, man, that kills me.
Yeah. I think it's hard for people that see competing on social media and they see it glamorized, and then they try to do it themselves, and then it gets hard. And then you get hungry, and you have those post-show blues, and you can't, you realize like competing isn't just show day. It's 364 days of the year that you have to be on your training and diet. So I think that's a really hard spot to be at for bikini competitors. What are you doing currently with your workout routine? So we can touch on that.
Yeah. So I actually always, I think, train 6 days a week.
Since you've started?
Since like 2 years before I started competing, yeah.
Okay. And then what's your split?
So right now I do 3 upper, 3 lower.
Is that personal preference, or is that based on feedback?
Both. Well, probably not personal preference, because I would much rather train upper body than lower body any freaking day.
I agree.
I've never been that girl who just wants to train glutes 7 days a week. Like, I can't.
Yeah.
But my feedback, because it is just grow, it wasn't necessarily in one specific area. I feel like I need to keep it pretty balanced in terms of like how much lower and upper training I'm getting. I don't necessarily neglect any areas. I'm not profusely training chest, but I do train chest every week. I love it. And I think that it's actually helped like my anterior deltoid a lot. And that's an area that a lot of women neglect. And for some with like, they can't train it, but
Right.
some just don't. And I think if you have the ability to do so, it's crucial just for fullness and like symmetry in your upper body, for posture. So I do train chest as well. I will hit shoulders probably at least 3 times a week. I don't, at this point, like I have very minimal direct quad work. I kind of cycle on and off of like a little bit more, a little bit less quad, but it's bikini. I really have to focus on glutes and shoulders. So
glutes and shoulders every day. And so I'm reading here, you drink 3 gallons of water a day.
Yeah.
Do you just like have a bathroom at all times near you? Why? I feel like I've heard of that close to like show day, but consistently, why 3 gallons?
Yeah. My body just got used to it.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm going to say 3 gallons is the max. It's
Okay.
never less than 2.5.
Okay.
But sometimes it's like in between there.
That is a lot of water.
I just drink a lot. Like today is a good example. It's not even 1:00 and I've already drank a gallon and like 75 ounces.
Oh my God. I just never heard of that much like consistently year round. I have my gallon right over here, but I've never heard of 3 gallons every day, all day.
I have tried to research, like, is that too much? Because there is a thing called like, I joke about it being like water drunk.
Yes.
And it's real. If you have ever tried to like chug an entire gallon, you will get an instant headache. You will feel dizzy. You will pretty much feel like you have a hangover.
Yeah.
It's not fun. I've experienced it. But I've also tried to look at the other end. I'm like, is there a negative side effect to drinking that much water? And I've asked other coaches and no one has an answer. So my body's used to
it. If it works for you, definitely keep on doing that. But I'm just very impressed by that, actually. So
nice.
A couple of advice that you want to give to others that are just looking to start a fitness journey. Where do we start? It's overwhelming. We see competitors just crushing it. I see abs. I see everything on social media. And I'm just a regular person. Like I want to get in shape, but I had no idea what to do. Where do you tell them? How does that work?
So look at the big picture. I see people try to go from 0 to 100 overnight. Their first instinct is to restrict. It's to do more. It's, you have to establish the foundation first. And that doesn't necessarily come from training and nutrition. A lot of that comes down to first, your water. Nobody really needs to be drinking as much water as me, but most Gen Pop people are not drinking enough. So start with your water. Focus on your sleep. Are you actually sleeping throughout the night? Are you getting enough quality and quantity of sleep? Because that could be a huge inhibitor to fat loss if that's your goal. And you have to, you could eat nothing if you want to, but if you're not sleeping, you're not going to see the results. So starting there, and stress management. I see a lot of women come to me for coaching that they have, it's like you're going to the buffet and your plate is just overwhelmed with food. So rather than eating a little bit and then either getting a new plate, they just keep piling it on. They don't know how to manage it. And don't add fitness or anything else on top of what you already have on your plate until you learn how to manage what's already in front of you.
think that's fantastic advice too for newbies, because, as hard as fitness is, I really don't think it's that complicated. Once I've been doing it for a while, it's like, maybe 45 minutes to an hour in the gym plus cardio. And that's it. Just be on your diet throughout the day. It's not like we're doing magical pills and supplements and who knows what protein powder or what's coming up next or some magical waist trainer. Like none of that is going to do it besides hard work. And so I want you to kind of let us know, who is your role model and who inspires you to feel your best?
So it was hard for me when you had like previously asked me, like, I was thinking about it. I'm like, okay, who is my biggest role model? I could go in so many directions with that. But one of my biggest role models is my dad. My dad is a badass. Straight up, like, not biased, right?
Yeah.
But my dad is also a swimmer, and at 59 years old, he is still a Masters USA swimmer. He competes at Worlds every year. He's been to like Colombia. He travels around swimming. He's very successful in his own career. He has always provided my family with, the best lifestyle we could have. I grew up with some amazing experiences. I've seen my dad stressed and just, he always like lives by example. He knows how to manage that. I don't know too many 59-year-olds who are training 2-a-days.
No.
Who he'll wake up every day at like 4 or 5 a.m. and he'll go do his like swim with his team. He'll go straight to work and drink his like double scoop protein shake on the way. The rest of the nutrition, Dad, please get on board with it. But, then he'll go back and weight train at night with my mom, and like, he lives a lifestyle in the longevity sense that I strive for. So he's absolutely my role model for that.
I love that so much. I love that answer. And I'm sure he'll like to maybe listen to this podcast and hear you talk about that. So if you like, before we get to kind of close out the podcast, I like to do reflection questions, because I think it's one of the most beneficial things you can do is just to reflect, not dwell, but just to reflect on past. So if you were able to time travel back in time and go tell yourself some piece of advice before you started your fitness journey, what would you say?
I would say, don't be so hard on yourself. You have to learn how to appreciate every little thing along the way. I have a tendency to just say, what's next? I don't even celebrate the little wins. I get off stage and I'm like, when's the next one? I'm not even trying to think about this anymore.
Yeah.
So rather than always focusing on the future, like, be present. Really allow yourself to relish in whatever moment you're in, whether it's a high or a low. There is a purpose for all of it, and you need to appreciate every little way, every step you take.
Yes. And another question the viewers are dying to know, are you team cupcake? Are you team protein shake or some other treat?
Girl, I am team cookie.
Okay. And then is there a specific cookie that's like, you have to have this specific cookie?
Yeah. So I have a problem with my cookies.
Okay.
Literally, I bought an entire freezer for my garage just for cookies.
No, you did not.
I did.
Oh my God. Are you working with any like cookie brands or anything?
I am now. I am working with Serial Killer Sweets. They're based out of Austin, Texas. I was with competitor Cookie Co. and then didn't this year.
Yeah.
But I love to support small businesses in general. And I've built so many awesome relationships with some of these owners. And they're cool. Like, I love cookies. I love sweets. So, I would much rather eat a real cookie and have my protein shake on the side.
Right.
Than have like a Lenny and Larry's. That's a no.
Yeah, it's a no for me too. I think it's a misconception that like competitors like don't like sweets. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, they're like, oh yeah, you like eating healthy. It's like, no, we know how to eat healthy. We love the sweets and treats as well.
Yeah, you eat healthy so that you can eat those things.
Yeah, it's like you don't look like how we get by eating cookies, but we have to like have that as motivation in order to stay on our diets.
Yep.
So the last couple of questions for you is, let's see, why do you compete still?
I still compete because one, I love it.
Okay.
I absolutely love this. And also, I have a goal and I'm not where I want to be. So I'm not going to give up until I reach that goal.
Okay. And then a few more before we close out, just for fun. If you were to win the lottery tomorrow, what are your first purchases? Why? And what are we buying?
Are we talking like that COVID exists or no?
I don't know. It's tomorrow. So yeah, I mean, it's still there.
Well, I love to travel. So
Okay.
if I won the lottery, I would just buy plane tickets to go everywhere and anywhere in the world that I want to see. Given the world circumstance, that's probably not an option. So I would go anywhere that I feasibly could. And yeah, I mean, I would definitely just, that would travel would be the first thing I could think of.
Travel. Perfect. Well, it's kind of bringing us to the end of our podcast. A few more things. Where can they find you? How can people get in touch with you if they were wanting to work with you?
So the easiest way is on Instagram. That's where I'm most active. I have my page is just Zopans, and then I have my team page and my email linked in my bio as well, so you can travel where you need to from there.
And then for 2021 this year, will we see you on stage?
That is a tough question. As of right now, I don't have any show plans. I refuse to step back on stage until I make the necessary improvements because I don't want to be in last callouts anymore.
Yep.
So if I can do that this year, then hell yeah, you'll see me on stage.
Okay. And we'll definitely be rooting for you. I'll be rooting for you until you get that Olympia qualification.
Bro, I'm rooting for you on your road to pro.
Oh gosh, it's long. I think it was this year that like last year I was in prep literally all year. And so I've just realized, it's going to be long. So now that I'm content in that, we're just going to keep prepping and keep going. So I do appreciate your insight for sure. So thank you for coming on. New episodes are every single Wednesday, and I'll have this posted next Wednesday, and I'll have you on the YouTube channel as well. So you can either watch or you guys can listen on Spotify or on iTunes and other like listening platforms. You can follow me on Instagram at Savana Sharp Fitness, and Cupcakes and Protein Shakes are new episodes every single Wednesday. And I'm going to stop recording.